Thank you for joining us this morning. I don't typically begin my sermons with an expression of gratitude for you being here, but today is different. The subject is weighty. I know that you come on Sundays seeking uplift and a smidgen of hope. And today's focus, well, death is difficult to face. This is true even now when we are in the heart of winter, which might be called the season of death. The sky grays, the wind is chill, the sweet earth freezes, green things go dormant, die. Leaves fall, branches are bare. In the garden, the last of the growing things perish or go dormant or wait for spring's coming warmth. In winter, death is everywhere. Death is everywhere because life is everywhere. Religion, wrote the Unitarian Universalist theologian Forrest Church, is our human response to the dual reality of being alive and having to die. Alive, you and I are aware that we will die. Alive, we carry with us the grief from mortal losses that haunt us, deaths of friends, family members, grandparents, parents, and hardest of all, for some of us, children. Alive, we are aware of absence. Alive, we are aware that our presence will end in absence. Alive, we are always confronted with the question the poet Elizabeth Alexander asked after the tragic early death of her husband. Which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life in New York City? Death is always sitting in the corner. Life is always freighted with beauty. Every minute of every day until we reach our last, we are confronted with the question, which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life? How do you answer that question today? This month, as part of our Future Visions, Future Selves series, we are taking up this most religious of subjects, death. As you might recall, over the course of a year, we're exploring three aspects of the future: societal, personal, and planetary. Together we're asking questions like, what does the future hold? How might we prepare for it? The most personal answers to those questions for us are always death. And we face death now at a time of profound loss. The philosopher John Clarke has named our age the new era of death. The journalist Ezra Klein quotes another philosopher, Antonio Gramsci, "Now is the time of monsters." The climate catastrophe and the global resurgence of white supremacist movements are entwined. Democratic societies are under threat. The world is burning. Species go extinct at startling rates. Wars rage. Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan. There has been more organized mass violence in the last 5 years than in the previous 2 decades. Los Angeles is aflame. At least 16 people have lost their lives. The property damage will probably make it the largest climate catastrophe in this country's history. Here in Houston, Mayor Whitmer made the decision not to open warming centers. A man froze to death while sleeping at a Second Ward bus stop on Monday. Which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life? John Clark, in his reflections on our new era of death, has observed that the political class is meeting these challenges with denial and disavowal. In the Buddhist tradition, denial is understood to be the rejection of truth. This is not happening. That is not happening. We are not truly mortal. We are not in a time of monsters. Disavowal, the silencing of the truth, the refusal to recognize that our decisions, or at least the decisions of our political class, have lit the world afire. Which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life? Our Unitarian Universalist tradition challenges us to ask this question and confront denial and disavowal. We are called to recognize what is happening, to name that we live in a new era of death, and reject denial. We are pushed to accept that we have some responsibility for what has brought us collectively to a time of monsters. It is only through rejecting denial and disavowal that we can fully embrace life. I sometimes refer to this process as undergoing the resurrection of the living, waking up to the world as it is and acknowledging our place in the great misorder of things. The resurrection of the living, moving beyond denial and disavowal, a new start to life, seeking a new start, finding a new start. It's something that many of you come to First Unitarian Universalist seeking. Confronted with the questions of which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life, you often arrive in our sanctuary or encounter us online, searching for a way to answer life to that question. I know this because you tell me. As part of our membership process, I ask potential members to meet with me. I do this so I can get to know you. I'm better equipped to minister to you if I know your stories, something of your religious backgrounds, something of your concerns. During these meetings, I usually ask, what brought you to First Unitarian Universalist? Your answers vary. You just got married, you are from different religious traditions and want a congregation that will honor both of your heritages. You recently started a family, and you're looking for a community in which to raise your children. You're a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. You just moved to Houston and want to connect with your faith community. You know your stories. Loss is a common tale. You've come with profound grief after the death of a partner, the end of a marriage, the loss of a close family member, the loss of a job. And you're seeking a community, a tradition that knows how to face death and devastation. You need a sanctuary where, within the brick weight of the walls, upon the silent age of the pews, under the light filtered through trees and clear glass, you can proclaim that life is stronger than death. You need a religion that after tragedy will empower you to move past denial and disavowal and wake up to the world as it is, one in which the price of life is death. Price of life is death. Every moment of our lives we creep closer to its advent. Decades ago, the British poet Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote of this truth. Hark, death is calling. While I speak to ye, the jaw is falling, the red cheek palling, the strong limb failing. Death is calling. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition offers us aid in making sense of this difficult future in two principal ways. First, it provides us guidance with how to live with loss. Second, it helps us to make peace with what is to come. The Irish poet Dylan Thomas might have advised, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." But the wise have often given different counsel. Each of us confronted with our mortality, confronted with grief, are challenged to make some meaning of it all. This morning, as we struggle with death, I offer 4 lessons from the world's wisdom traditions that might help you with grief and loss. I put them before you in the hopes that they might help you feel the strength of life in the presence of death. I share them with you as an aid to rejecting denial and disavowal and waking up to the beauty of the world as it is. First lesson: no one has found a way to escape death. Morally bankrupt billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Larry Ellison might dream of using their absurd wealth to avoid it. Cryogenic freezing and treating death as a disease is all the rage amongst the Silicon Valley elite. Violent conquistadors once pillaged their way across the continent in search of the fountain of youth. They never found its soothing waters. They have all turned to dust. Death comes for us all. Some Buddhist traditions teach us that to move beyond denial and disavowal to this reality, we can use a profound practice, the corpse meditation. The meditation begins, aware of my body, alive and breathing. I breathe in. Smiling to my body, alive and breathing. I breathe out. Taking the practitioner through the stages of death and bodily decomposition, the meditation concludes, seeing my mortal remains being mixed with the earth. I breathe in, smiling to my mortal remains being mixed with the earth. I breathe out. The great Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote that the purpose of this meditation is to help us become accustomed to the fact that sooner or later we all have to die. It is a way of meditating on the impermanence of the body. If we become familiar and comfortable with the idea that makes us afraid of death, the decomposition of our bodies, we shall begin to transform that fear. And then, transforming that fear, we will begin to live our lives more deeply and with more care and awareness. Life is stronger than death when we recognize that death is part of life. We cannot escape it. If we embrace this truth, then we can shed our fear of it. I will not pretend that this is easy. Religious practices like the corpse meditation are called practices because we need to do them over and over again if we are to absorb their lessons. There are times when I struggle with the fear of death. And there are times, aware of the fleeting nature of life, I find myself overcome with the world's beauty. How is it for you? Second lesson, this time from the Greek humanists. It's found in the words of the poet Glycon. Nothing but laughter, nothing but dust, nothing but nothing. No reason why it happens. We make our own meanings in the face of death. Some find comfort in religious narratives that speak of ultimate celestial destinies. Others talk only of life on earth. In our community, we recognize that no tradition, as of yet, has managed to unveil an ultimate meaning of it all that every person on earth can embrace. What you make of your life, what you make of your death in the end, no matter how great the forces of the world that buffet and buffer you are, is to some extent up to you. You can embrace this religious tradition, you can embrace that one. But we are feeling creatures capable of making a great choice. My life signifies this, or my life signifies that. Within the limits that I lived, for we are all limited in some way or another, I made what I could of the breaths I took between the womb and the grave. We make meanings from the deaths of others as well. Next Sunday, we will celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His death and life have meant many different things for many different people. The same is true on a smaller level for almost all of us. I've learned this through my decades of conducting memorial services. For one person, the deceased was primarily a mother. For another, she was a friend. For a third, a former president of the board of the congregation, a teacher, a social activist, a smiling presence who always brought food and flowers and kindness into the world. The meaning is more difficult. Always we are asked, in the words of the poet Mary Oliver, "Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild, precious life?" Your one wild, precious life. Here we turn to the wisdom of the great W.E.B. Du Bois. At the end of his life, he claimed, "Always I have been uplifted by the thought that what I have done well, and it will live long and justify my life. And what I have done ill or never finished can now be handed on to others." Coming into this world, if life is stronger than death, we must answer the question about life and decide how we will make a meaning from the one precious life that we have. A third lesson is the recognition that many deaths are not the will of God. They're often the result of choices that we make, either as individuals or as communities or even as a human species. William Sloane Coffin, the former minister of Riverside Church in New York, held up this point when he was reflecting on the death of his own son, Alex. Alex died in a car crash at the age of 24. He had been driving drunk. His death, Coffin wrote, was not the will of God. It was not God's will that Alex never fixed that lousy windshield wiper, that he was driving too fast in such a storm, that he had had a couple too many. It's not God's will that there were no streetlights along that stretch of road and no guardrail separating the road and the water. Death can only be faced honestly, confronted fully, if we recognize that human actions and choices are so often connected to it. The homeless man who died in the cold on Monday likely died because the city chose not to open warming centers. The fires that are raging across Los Angeles right now come from human choices about failing to address the climate crisis. Would they be happening if in 1980 this country had embraced the truth-telling of Jimmy Carter over the denialism of Ronald Reagan? Would they be happening if Los Angeles developers did not repeatedly build homes in dry hills where over and over and over again environmentalists have told them not to construct residencies? Jimmy Carter understood that human choices have a profound impact on who lives and who dies. After he left the White House, he devoted himself to lessening the death in the world. One focus of his was the eradication of guinea worm disease. In 1986, there were 3.5 million cases reported across the globe. This past year, there were 11. I think we can offer a moment of appreciative pause there for Carter's, and yeah. Like all of us, former President Carter was confronted with the question, which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life? After his presidency, his answer was clear. He did what he could to strengthen life. His legacy invites us to make similar choices. We are each asked, how do you choose? Fourth lesson, captured from the Christian tradition in those famous verses in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. Love is precious and kind, patient and kind. There is nothing love cannot face. There is no limit to its faith, its hope, its endurance. Love will never come to an end. Love will never come to an end. Perhaps this is the most helpful balm for the reality of death. The love we bring into this world, and each of us is capable of bringing love into this world, lingers long after we have gone. If we have children, it remains with them. If we are part of a community, it endures as long as the community lasts, perhaps even longer. The love of the members of our Chalice Society has blessed us, or continues to bless us with their bequests. The love President Carter had for the people of the world will remain long after he is gone. His dream of eradicating a disease has almost come true. When it does, there will be never another person who suffers from it. Truly an enduring act of love. Love. This is ultimately the answer placed in the question, which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life? If we love the world, our life will always be stronger than the death because love will always remain. Writing of the death of her husband, Elizabeth Alexander said, "I can always see him." Thinking of my own beloved dead, I know that there is some part of them that I will always feel, always remember, a story, a sense, a shared laughter, a wise offering. I suspect that the same is true for you. The endurance of love, a recognition of our human responsibility for death, the knowledge that we each make our own meaning, and an acceptance of the truth that we will each die. These are 4 lessons from the world's wisdom traditions. They each invite us in this wintry season of death to find some peace and comfort as we face what inevitably must come. They are bound up this morning in a 5th lesson. The question, which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life, is easier to face when answered in a community. That is why I started my sermon with a note of gratitude, because I am grateful for you and your ability to help me endure the inevitable, and I hope that you are grateful for me for the same reason. This collective seeking is the reason why so many of you join us. And so in this hope that our time together will find something meaningful for you, some comfort in what you seek, I close our sermon with a prayer. O Spirit of life, passing through each and binding each to all, inspire us to answer yes to the beauty of life, and remember that we have the power to create meaning, the strength to do something, large or small, to better the lives of others, and hold within us and can share around us a love that endures beyond all endings. In the face of death, let us embrace life. Let us always be vessels of healing, hope, and love. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.